This video segment was designed to help teachers learn how to use the lesson planner for their daily lesson plans. So we're going to go ahead and use this school right here, and I'm logged in as Gregory Aumann. These are the courses that Gregory teaches, and if we go to the lessons database, one of the first things you'll want to check is to make sure that you have your class section set up. So lessons, and then I went class section setup. And so notice I have those classes all set up. If you don't, you'll want to watch a video on the setting up of class sections. So since that's done, I can go to my lessons database. And if I go to any of my courses, let's say that I'm going to work in Algebra 1. Notice there are not any lessons created for Algebra 1 yet at this point. So let's go ahead and click Add Lesson. And let's say that it's going to be the definition of real numbers. And notice that it has a spell checker, so that's kind of nice for me. And it'll have the course that I was in. You could change it to a different course if you did that incorrectly, but it is an Algebra 1 lesson. And then what you do is you would assign it to one of the units in curriculum track. So I'm going to go ahead and assign it to real number operations. And notice what happens then is it brings the benchmarks and the attachments down from that unit. It doesn't look like there are any unit attachments, but if there were, those would come into this area. So the first thing I can define is I teach Algebra 1 during 2 different hours of the day. So I can define exactly when I'm going to be teaching this. So let's say that I'm going to be teaching it in both class sections on Monday the 21st. Again, these are the benchmarks that are in the unit called real number operations, but on this daily lesson I'm going to be addressing or teaching that particular benchmark. Next item is the lesson objectives, activities. For your school, you're probably going to see different headings here, and that's because for each school, it's completely customizable what fields they want to have in their lessons itself. So I can enter my daily lesson objectives here. And I can type that in if I wanted to, or if you have that content from another place, you can enter that in as well by copy and pasting. So I'm going to enter my daily assignment here. And by the way, there's a spell checker here as well. And then here is my list of materials. And I can use a bulleted list or numbered list if I want to. So item 1, item 2, item 3, and so forth. So I go ahead and type in my information. Next item is the attachments. And so there's 2 ways to add attachments to a lesson. One is you can choose one of the unit attachments, which there happens to be none for this particular unit. Or you can actually browse and find those attachments here. So let's go ahead and find a file here to link to. So let's just grab this PDF here. The title is optional. If you don't, it's going to use the title of the file name itself. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the real number activity is what I'll call it. And I'll go ahead and click Add. So now I have that lesson added in. If I want to add in another lesson, I can do that as well. You just simply come here and you give it the next name. So let's just say lesson number 2. And let's say that this is actually going to be using this unit instead. Still no attachments, but notice it's different benchmarks. And I can choose my dates. So I'm going to cover this on this date and this date, and maybe I'm going to spend 2 days on it because I know this is going to be a shortened class period, and I'll click Add. So that's how you add lessons in. As far as editing lessons, you simply click on the pencil icon behind the lesson name, and you can change anything about it. So if you want to change the dates, or maybe I had the wrong benchmark selected, I forgot to enter some text here. So I can do edit that, click save, and back to my list of lessons. I also have the ability to print one of these lessons. So if I click on this and notice it's a nice printable view stripped of the graphics and such, has the full benchmark and so forth. So that can be kind of nice if you want to actually teach off of that. You also have the ability to copy a lesson or clone a lesson. So if I click copy, I can give it a new name. So maybe I taught that lesson and the students just didn't really get it. So I'm going to teach it again with just a little bit different slant. And as far as the date, I'm going to teach that. Let's say that I'm going to teach that on the 24th. And let's say that 4th hour got it, so I'm not going to assign it to 4th hour. So then I could come in here and still adjust it as need be. Maybe I no longer need this item and so forth, and I can click save. So now notice that it has that lesson in here as well. So that's how you add lessons, edit lessons, print them, and copy lessons. And by the way, if you ever want to search for lessons because you have a whole year of them, it's kind of nice. You can choose just one unit at a time. And if you want to just see the lessons attached to that unit, that can be very handy as well. Next, let's talk about the weekly planner. So if I go to the weekly planner, school doesn't start this week yet, so let's go ahead and click next to go to next week. And notice it has the lessons that I entered in here. And remember, we were going to teach this one to the 1st hour, but not the 4th hour. And this one was going to take 2 days and so forth. So let's talk about these icons here itself. First of all, this icon here, what that allows you to do is attach lessons from this view instead. So for instance, if I'm going to teach lesson number 2 on Wednesday as well, and I'm going to teach real numbers again, part 2 on Friday, now I can click go back and notice that I added those 2 in. Or if I want to take one out, maybe on the 21st, I'm no longer going to teach this, I can click this red X and remove it. And click go back, and now it's out of there. So I have that ability. The next item is the move multiple lessons. So let's say that something came up on this 4th hour. Let's say we have an assembly or something on Tuesday the 22nd. So I can click on this move, and I'm going to say move everything from the 22nd to the end of the year. So I'll just leave that one blank. And I want to move everything 1 day later or to the right. So we'll click Move Lessons. And now notice it moved these 2 lessons from here, Tuesday and Wednesday, to Wednesday and Thursday. So that move feature is really handy if you have a special assembly or a snow day, or for some reason that class did not meet on that particular day. The last icon here is to add notes to your planner. So maybe on Monday or Tuesday, intro to class, we'll just call it. And I'll click save. It's really not a lesson. It's just a note to fill in that box. Maybe I want to be reminded that there's an assembly on Tuesday. That's why this was pushed back. So let's go ahead and type in assembly for this class section on Tuesday. And so it fills that in. By the way, a couple other things with this before we move on. The PDF print, you can have page break between the class sections, and if you want the benchmark descriptions, notice there's a printable view, and if I actually print that, there will be a page break in between each of these sections. And then the other item that I wanted to mention on here is you have the ability to specify exactly what fields you want to show. Right now it's showing all this content, the materials list, everything. And it's showing some of the unit content too, like the unit name, the benchmarks, unit attachments. Maybe all I want to show on this particular view is the lesson name. So I'll uncheck all those. You can't uncheck lesson name. You have to show those. So that gives, as you can see, a much, much cleaner view. And you can still click on these if you want to see the full description of that lesson. But honestly, this weekly planner is probably not one of the best tools for teaching from. This is more your planning tool, a guide, if you will, a larger map of what you're teaching when. If you want to have a tool to teach from, I strongly recommend using the daily view instead of all classes. So what that allows us to do is, let's say that I want to move to the 21st, and I could go to the 22nd. Let's go to 23rd. Okay, so on the 23rd, notice during first hour I teach lesson 2, during fourth hour I teach lesson 2, and so forth. It would have all your class sections that you are teaching unit in. So this gives us a lot more detail. Let's go back again, actually. See if I can find a lesson with a little more content in. Yeah, this definition of real numbers. It has my benchmark. I can put my mouse over to see that. It has my attachment, which I can open up here. Opens in a new window or a new tab, so I can close it. I'm back where I started. Has my materials. This is something I could actually teach from because it has all the content in. And by the way, with the newer version of Curriculum Track, there's a really nice feature here in that if you want to teach from your smartphone, let's make this nice and small like what a smartphone might be, maybe about like that. So I'm going to go to that same report or view, the daily view of all classes, and let's choose the 21st. And notice it's going to have each of my class sections that I'm teaching that day, and if I click on this, I can expand it, and if I click on it again, it contracts it back again. So that's a real nice tool for you to be able to expand and collapse and see all your information. So let's make it more of a desktop view once again. Next view is the weekly view by class. And so let's say that I want to look at the entire week, next week of my first hour. And so let's click next to go to next week. Notice nothing on Monday, but then it shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And again, has all the information. So this too would be a really nice printable view to teach from if you want to have all your information for one class section for the entire week. You also have the ability to print lessons. So if I pull up Algebra 1, it has my lessons here for that unit, or I could choose a different unit, or maybe I want all my units. And so I can choose, so let's say that I want to print out all the lessons for this real number operations unit. So I can click select all. There's only 2 here, but you might have a lot more than that. And if I click print, notice it has those, and you could print those out from here. Real nice tool if you want to work with hard copies. And then finally, the class section setup is something that allows you to see the class or to set up your classes and such. Let's go back to my teacher's database. One last thing I want to show you is if I choose Algebra 1, maybe in my school there's several other teachers that teach Algebra 1. And actually, let's choose Algebra 2. And I happen to know that Philip McGoldrick also teaches Algebra 2, so I can choose him. And these are the classes that he teaches. Notice I can't update or delete these, but I can actually go into teachers that teach the same courses as me, and I can see what their lessons look like, and I could copy those into mine. So I forget what this was called again. Looks like Algebra 2 orientation. So let's copy that. And I'll call it Algebra 2 orientation first day or something like that. And I can go ahead and specify what day, and I can choose some benchmarks. Notice it takes the content that he has as well as some of the files, so I can go ahead and click save. And so what it allows me to do now is if I go back to my lessons database and I choose Algebra 2, notice that it has that lesson. And if I want to click on it to view it or print it, it has all that information. So you can't grab lessons or copy lessons of any teacher, but you can copy lessons from teachers that teach the same thing as you. And that way it's a nice way in which you can share those lessons and work together. This now concludes this instructional video.